Blinken in Lithuania.
Šiandien turėjome progą
We had
akis
an
į akį
opportunity
aptarti
to discuss
esminius mums labiausiai
key and
nerimą
most
keliančius
concerning
klausimus
issues,
Rusijos vykdomo
including
karo Ukrainoje
Russian war against
bei tolimesnius
Ukraine
veiksmus dėl
and further
paramos Ukrainai
actions in
ir
support
kaip
to
reiktų
Ukraine
stiprinti
and how
Lietuvos
we
bei
should
viso regiono
strengthen
saugumą.
the security of Lithuania and the
Jungtinės
entire
Amerikos
region.
valstijos, Lietuva ir kiti
The
mūsų
United
alijanso
States,
partneriai
Lithuania and
darome
other
labai
partners
daug.
of the alliance are doing a
Bet
lot,
negalime sustoti.
but we cannot stop.
Mes negalime leisti,
We
kad
cannot
Ukrainos miestai taptų dar
afford for
viena
Ukrainian cities to
Srebrenica,
become
Grozno
another
ar Aleppo.
Srebrenica, Grozno or Aleppo.
Pagalbos teikimas Ukrainai turi
Providing
tęstis.
assistance to Ukraine has to
Privalome raginti
continue.
mūsų
We
partnerius
have to
patikrinti
urge our
sandėlius,
partners to
didinti
check their
užsakymus ir siųsti
inventories, to
Ukrainai
increase
pagalbą,
their
kurios jai
orders,
labiausiai reikia.
and continue supplying
Rusijos pradėtas karas
assistance
reiškia
to
ir
Ukraine that it
humanitarinę
needs
bei
so
galimą
much.
ekologinę
The
krizę.
Russian-initiated
Turime dėti
war
visas pastangas,
also
kad
means
būtų
a
užtikrinti
humanitarian as well as
humanitariniai
climate
koridoriai.
crisis, and we have
Ir
to do
saugios
everything that
zonos
is
aplink
possible to
atominės
prevent the
elektrines,
humanitarian
kurios
corridors
panašu
and
tampa
safe
Rusijos karo
areas around
mašinos
nuclear
taikiniais.
power plants from becoming targets of
Džiaugiuosi, kad
Russian
JAV
war
didina karinį
machine.
buvimą
I'm
Baltijos regione
happy
tiek
that
žmonėmis, tiek
the US is
įranga.
increasing its
JAV kariai
presence in
saugo
the
mūsų
Baltic
šalį,
region in
bet
troops and in
įsitikinti su mumis
equipment.
ir kitais
US
NATO
troops
partneriais.
are protecting our country
Žinome, kad
together with
sąjungininkų
other
įsipareigojimai
NATO
mūsų
partners.
saugumui
We know
yra
that the
nepajudinami.
commitments of
Tačiau,
the
jei norime dar tvirtesnio
allies
NATO
are
politinio stuburo, turime
ironclad,
užtikrinti,
and
kad
if we
Baltijos
want
šalys
to
yra
continue
padengtos
building even stronger
nepramušama
NATO, politically
gynyba.
stronger, we need to
Rusijos
ensure
ekonominė
security of
blokada
the
dar
Baltic
nėra
states.
pasiekusi visiškos
Russian
izoliacijos
economic
lygio.
blockade has not
Girdime,
reached
kad yra
total
pasinaudojama
isolation level,
nesankcionuotais
and we have
bankais,
heard that
idant
there
būtų
were
apeinamos
attempts
jau
to
įvestos
use
sankcijos.
unsanctioned banks
Turime uždaryti
to evade
visas
the
spragas.
already existing sanctions. So
Energijos
we have to
šaltiniai,
close all the
kuriuos
possible
importuojame,
gaps.
leidžia Rusijai
And
finansuoti
energy
karinę
resources
operaciją.
that we are using
Negalime
allows
Ukrainos
Russia to
krauju
fund its
mokėti
military
už naftą
operation,
ir
and we
dujas.
cannot pay for oil and gas
Ir
with
JAV yra su
Ukrainian
Lietuva
blood.
ir su
The
Baltijos
US
valstybėmis.
stands with Lithuania
JAV
and
yra
the
čia
Baltic
su
states.
savo
The United
įsipareigojimais,
States stand here
kariais,
with their commitments,
pajėgumais.
with their troops and
Jie čia yra
capabilities.
realiai,
They are here
o
in
ne žalio
reality
ekrano,
and
o ne
not
prie
in
žalio
front of a
ekrano
green
su
screen
nupieštais
with
mikrofonais.
the fake microphones.
Šiandien sekretoriaus
Together,
apsilankymas Lietuvoje
today,
dar kartą
the
parodo,
Secretary's
kad
visit
JAV
shows
yra
once
kartu su
again
Lietuva
that
ir
the
Baltijos
United States
valstybėmis
stands with
ir kartu su
Lithuania and the
Ukraina
Baltic states, and it
ir jos
also stands
žmonėmis.
with Ukraine and its people.
Well, thank you very, very much. Gabrielus, thank you so much for the warm welcome. It's been a real pleasure to be able to spend time with the President, with the Prime Minister, and with you. And I just have to say, for starts, on a personal note, how much I appreciate you as a colleague, how much I appreciate the strength of your voice, your conviction in our own relationship at NATO, throughout Europe. It makes a big difference, and it's greatly appreciated. And I'm pleased to be here with our Ambassador to Lithuania, Bob Gilchrist, who's been a terrific leader for the team that I was able to meet with this morning before meeting with our colleagues in the government. We're celebrating, the United States and Lithuania, 100 years of diplomatic relations this year. We're NATO allies. We're economic partners. And we share together a deep commitment to democracy, to human rights, to the international rules-based order, which we recognize as the foundation of our shared security and which is being directly threatened by Russia's unprovoked, unjustified war against Ukraine. Lithuanians understand the critical importance of every nation's sovereignty and territorial integrity being respected, having lived through decades of Soviet occupation, a forcible occupation that the United States always refused to recognize. In recent years, Moscow has sought to undermine Lithuania's democracy and sow polarization within its population through cyber attacks and disinformation campaigns. That's because the free, open, vibrant, prosperous society that the people of Lithuania have built since the end of Soviet occupation shows what's possible when people choose the path of democracy over autocracy. It's why the United States supported and advocated for Lithuania's membership in NATO and the European Union. And this country, Lithuania, has consistently made outsized contributions to both organizations. Lithuania's commitment to freedom was evident at the Summit for Democracy that President Biden convened late last year, where Vilnius pledged to expand its efforts to support and provide refuge to pro-democracy activists from Belarus and Russia, to promote international accountability measures for gross human rights violations, to increase support for media freedom and the safety of journalists. How prescient and necessary those commitments proved to be. In the face of the current crisis, the United States and Lithuania are united in our resolve to stand with Ukraine. We're surging security assistance to strengthen Ukraine's capacity to defend itself. We're increasing humanitarian aid to the Ukrainian people. We're raising the costs on the Kremlin and all who aid and enable it for continuing this war of choice. And we're bolstering our shared defense so that we and our allies are prepared to meet any threat. The United States has deployed an additional 7,000 forces to Europe. We've repositioned forces already in Europe to strengthen NATO's eastern flank. That includes the extension, as of last week, of the U.S. Army's 366 Armor Battalion, which was deployed to Lithuania in July, the deployment of F-35 strike fighters to the region to augment NATO's enhanced air policing mission. An additional 400 personnel from the 1st Armored Brigade Combat Team will be arriving in Lithuania in the days to come. The United States' commitment to Article 5, an attack on one is an attack on all, that commitment is sacrosanct. And as President Biden repeated to the American people in his State of the Union address just a few days ago, we will defend every inch of NATO territory if it comes under attack. No one should doubt our readiness. No one should doubt our resolve. Over the past several weeks, I authorized allies to provide U.S.-origin defense equipment to our Ukrainian partners. Lithuania stepped up with Stinger anti-aircraft missiles, M72 light anti-tank weapons, and other supplies to help the extraordinarily courageous Ukrainian people defend their country from Russian aggression. Vilnius is also sending about 4 million euros in emergency medical assistance for Ukraine, 30 truckloads packed with aid, urgently needed, given the growing carnage that's being inflicted by the Kremlin's sieges and attacks on civilians. When the Lithuanian Red Cross issued a call just last week for donations to help people in Ukraine, it filled 50 trucks the very first day. We see blue and yellow flags hanging from homes and businesses across this country. And a Lithuanian NGO has reportedly registered nearly 6,000 households willing to take in Ukrainian refugees. The Ukrainians who eventually arrive in Lithuania will join hundreds of anti-corruption activists, opposition politicians, journalists, human rights defenders who already have found safe haven here after being forced to flee attacks, threats, imprisonment in Russia and Belarus in recent years. Vilnius is the temporary home of Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, the leader of Belarus's pro-democracy movement, with whom I've had the privilege of meeting on several occasions, including most recently in Munich during the security conference. We're very grateful to Lithuania for hosting the State Department's Belarus Affairs Unit, led by Ambassador Julie Fisher. That unit is focused on supporting the democratic aspirations of the Belarusian people and holding the Lukashenko regime accountable for its widespread human rights violations. Until last May, Vilnius also provided refuge for Belarusian blogger and dissident Roman Protasevich, until a commercial jet that he was traveling on was intercepted by a Belarusian fighter jet and he was arbitrarily detained. We join Lithuania in continuing to call for his immediate release and the release of all people being unjustly detained in Russia and in Belarus, including the growing number arrested for protesting the Kremlin's ongoing war. Yesterday alone, the Russian government reportedly detained more than 4,600 people demonstrating against the war in 65 Russian cities and towns. Vilnius recognizes that a threat to the rules-based order anywhere has the potential to weaken it everywhere. This includes the principle that every nation is free to associate with whom it chooses. That's why we respect and support Lithuania's decision to expand commercial ties with Taiwan, another leading democracy. Beijing has responded to Vilnius' decision with economic coercion and political pressure designed to divide the European Union and punishing Lithuania into reversing course. We support the EU's decision to launch a legal challenge against China at the WTO. We have to defend the rules that keep trade fair. Beijing talks a lot about the importance of upholding international order, stability, respecting sovereignty. But from its coercion of Vilnius to its failure thus far to condemn Moscow's flagrant violation of the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine, Today and in 2014, Beijing's actions are speaking much louder than its words. The United States continues to stand by Lithuania and the right of every nation to choose its own path. We're supporting Lithuania as it reorients its supply chains and deepens its economic resilience. In November, we created a $600 million Export-Import Bank credit facility here, and that will help facilitate U.S. exports to Lithuania, but also help Lithuanian businesses in the sectors that have been hardest hit by the PRC's measures, like semiconductors, like biotechnology. Our Undersecretary for Economic Affairs, Jose Fernandez, was just here with colleagues from the Export-Import Bank to support these efforts and deepen our economic cooperation. As Lithuania continues to stand for these principles, it can count on the United States to stand with it. Thank you.
Now is the time for questions. Žilvinas Adomaitis from Lithuanian National Television. Žygintas Abramaitis.
On behalf of whole Lithuanian media, it's a question for you, Mr. Blinken. President Nauseda warned about World War III if Putin is not stopped, but it looks like the only war could stop him, and not sanctions or political pressure or even deterrence. Putin is now saying that he'll go till the end, and Russia is threatening NATO countries over support of Ukraine. You keep saying that you'll defend every inch of NATO territory. So will you send American troops to the Baltic region permanently, air defense systems? Where is the red line? After crossing it, NATO will enter the war directly, and how likely Russia is ready to start a nuclear war? And furthermore, could you confirm that Poland will send fighter jets in exchange for American F-16s? Thank you.
Thank you very much. A few things. First, as I noted, in response to Russia's aggression against Ukraine, one of the things we did is exactly what we said we'd do for many, many months, which is in the event of Russian aggression, we would reinforce NATO's eastern flank. And that's exactly what we've done. And we're in the midst of continuing to do that now, including with the deployment of additional forces, including American forces here to Lithuania, F-35 fighters, various pieces of important equipment, all of which is being deployed here, deployed to the other states in the Baltics. At the same time, we're continuously reviewing within NATO our defense posture, including looking at questions of extending the deployment of forces, looking at questions of more permanent deployments. All of that is under regular review, and we're engaged with NATO allies in doing just that. Gabrielus and I were just at a meeting of the NATO foreign ministers a few days ago in Brussels, and this is one of the issues, of course, that came up. Second, we said a few other things for many, many months as we saw, the two of us, our countries, the likelihood of Russian aggression against Ukraine. And even as we tried everything we could to push Russia to a diplomatic path to try to resolve whatever concerns it had that might be, that anyone would consider legitimate through diplomacy and dialogue, even as we were doing that, we said that we would be fully prepared if it chose the path of aggression. We said that we would reinforce NATO's eastern flank. We are. We said that we would come to the aid of Ukraine by providing it more and more assistance. We are. We said that we would impose massive consequences on Russia for its aggression. We are. And I think those consequences, the severity of the economic sanctions and other measures that have been taken, are well beyond what I think many people anticipated and are certainly unprecedented. And they are having a dramatic impact already. We see the ruble going through the floor. We see Russia's credit rating coming basically to zero, to junk status, as we would call it. We see its stock market shut down. We see an exodus of virtually every leading company from Russia. All of those things are happening. They're happening in real time. At the same time, other steps that we've taken, including export controls on the most important technology that Russia needs to modernize for the future, including its defense and aerospace industries, including its energy sector, that technology is being denied to Russia. That's going to have a powerful impact over time. We're also seeing the effect of the assistance that we have been able to provide to Ukraine and we're continuing to provide to Ukraine, in Ukraine when it comes to the incredible courage they're showing and the effectiveness they're having in standing against Russian aggression. So all of these things, as we said, are happening. They're having an impact. Having said that, it's also true and clear that Russia has a hugely disproportionate force compared to what Ukraine has. It has the ability to continue to grind down the Ukrainian military and, of course, to take horrific actions against the Ukrainian people, including attacking civilians. We want this to come to a stop as quickly as possible, which is why we will continue to increase pressure on Russia, continue to support Ukraine. But as I said yesterday, even if and as Russia might win a battle in Ukraine, that doesn't mean it's winning the war. If and as Russia might take a city in Ukraine, that doesn't mean that it's taking the hearts and minds of the Ukrainian people. It can't, it won't. And whether it's a week, whether it's a month, whether it's longer, I'm utterly convinced that Ukraine will prevail. Finally, when it comes to NATO, the line is very clear, and I'll repeat it. If there is any aggression anywhere on NATO territory, on NATO countries, we, the United States, all of our allies and partners, will take action to defend every inch of NATO territory. It's as clear and direct as that.
Simon Lewis, Reuters, your question, please.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this. For Secretary Blinken, I wondered if you would be able to comment on reports that the US believes that Russia has begun recruiting Syrians to fight in the war in Ukraine. And to the Foreign Minister, even before this invasion of Ukraine and the current tense security situation, Lithuania was already dealing with the threat from another power of economic and diplomatic pressure from China over your stance towards Taiwan. You know, how can you balance those two threats, and what can the United States provide? What are you asking for the United States to provide to help you deal with both of those? Thank you.
I'm happy to start. Simon, I've seen the reports that you refer to. I can't confirm them at this time.
Well, I think that, and as Secretary Blinken mentioned, both cases are about defending a similar principle. One power is challenging the rules-based order when it comes to the borders of other countries, when it comes to geopolitics, when it comes to the security architecture of, one might say Europe, but I would say that it's a global architecture, because it doesn't matter where the country is. Is it in Indo-Pacific? Is it in Europe? Is it in any other continent? Every country has hopes and wants guarantees that its borders, sovereignty, will not be violated. The other power is trying to bend globally agreed rules of trade and is trying to use trade as a political instrument, in some cases even as a weapon, to force countries to change the course, no matter that it's legal, no matter that it's a sovereign right of the country to do so. So, not by our design, Lithuania becomes a case of defending both principles and becomes a country which in some cases leads by example what it means to defend the global rules-based order, be it geopolitical or economic.
Thank you.
Uždavinėtas to lietaus klausimas.